Major support for these programs is provided by Bank of America Merrill Lynch and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, GREENBERG TRAURIG, LLP, M&T Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending. Additional support is provided by Briarwood Organization, Bruce Mosler, Capital One Bank, Cassidy TURLEY, C.B. Richard Ellis, Chelsea Lighting, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova Burns and Giantomasi, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Corman Communities, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey KNAKAL Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Sterling and Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, the WITKOFF Group, Urban American, and Ackman Ziff Real Estate, Ariel Property Advisors, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Goldman Properties, Moynihan Group, Must Development, RAL Development Services, the Spandrel Group, LLC, Rosewood Realty Group, Terra CRG, Triangle Equities.
So here we are, in the spring of 2012. And the big question is, everybody's saying that the rents are going up. New York City is in fantastic shape. And, I really don't know. People look at me, I'm the ultimate pessimist. So I brought together three optimists, I hope they're optimists, to provide their insight on on where they think the real estate market is going in 2012. My guests, they include Michael Levine, who is the principal at Norse Realty and also a member of the board of New York Community Bancorp. My friend Josh Muss, who's the chairman of the board and CEO of Muss Development. And last but not least, another Levine, Jeffrey Levine, who's the senior partner at Margolin, Weiner & Evans. So Joshua, since you've always been, developments take a couple years, how do you look at it these days? I mean, am I the pessimist, the only pessimist, or are you going to be an optimist?
I think I could say I'm optimistic that the world's not going to fall apart anymore. Whether it's going to spurt ahead is a matter of concern. I think New York City is a very isolated island in the world. New York City is doing very well. Whether the issues around...
Is New York City doing well? Or is Manhattan and Brooklyn doing well? Or are all five boroughs doing well?
No, New York City is an entity. I think certain areas are certainly doing better than others. But if Manhattan is doing well, that means that everything around it is going to feed off of it. Obviously, if there are jobs, people are going to coming in from New Jersey, from Westchester, from Long Island, and of course the boroughs. Right now, there is a boom in New York City for the tech market. In fact, this morning I heard an article where just about every new tech business that is being founded is starting in New York City. However, it is that in California they have much of the existing businesses. And this is spreading to Brooklyn, and eventually it'll spread to Long Island City as the tech business starts booming up on Roosevelt Island.
Let's go back to 2001. 2001, I was doing some consulting for the accounting firm of Deloitte, and part of my role was to work in the internet new media business with some very young people. And we had brought in 600 or 700 people from California guys who work for Napster were, I didn't even know what Napster and all these things were. And we brought all these people in, and then there was a decision made that the world was getting slow, and we laid off all these people. I mean, right in 2000, before 9/11, this is a couple months before 9/11. You know, the tech business is booming today. You know, but bubbles change. I mean, you've seen bubbles. I mean, you have a double thing. You're in the real estate business, and you're also a banker. And as a banker of a $42 billion bank, you know, you have to be prudent. How do you see everything?
We have concerns. To say our bank is unique. We are the largest multifamily lender in the tri-state area, specifically overwhelmingly in New York. 70% of our $25 billion portfolio is multifamily, and out of that, probably 90% is New York City, the bulk being just rent stabilized. We're not worried about the $1,000 apartment going down to $700. But in today's world, when you are paying $90 a square foot for an apartment, that $90 can go down to $70 fairly quick, and all of a sudden, bingo, the equity is gone. So we are concerned about the free market and those type of rents.
Yeah, but I think, you know, let's look at that. Let's take the reality. We had 2007, everything was happy days. Rents were going up to these high numbers. They weren't at $90, but they were at $80. And then, you know, all of a sudden, I still remember I was on a vacation, and then Bear Stearns goes. Then a couple months later, Lehman goes. And then everything really starts falling apart. And as Ophir Denny said on my show, you know, I used to have tenants in my building that they would come in, you know, they wouldn't use the utilities because they worked. But now they didn't have a job. They used too much water. They used too much heat. They used too much, they cooked pasta. They used the gym. And you know what? This bubble over there, you know, and how much money can people pay? How do you see it? I mean, you represent so many different type of developers, and you've been in the real estate business over the years. How do you?
You started out that this group has been through numerous cycles. You talk of 2001, before 9/11. This city was in terrible shape prior to 9/11. For the real estate guys, unfortunately with World Trade Center, that square footage was absorbed throughout the city. That helped the economy. We saw new hotels coming out that year. Numbers just didn't work. It's a cycle. Accountants, by definition, are conservative. I wear a belt.
I'm sitting here with two accountants, and I'm an accountant also, so three, you know, it's...
We wear belts,
one attorney. Okay.
I'm an anti-accountant.
Thanks, Josh. But the other concern we have today that we didn't have before, in all fairness, is Dodd-Frank, which is putting a real crimp. Everybody sitting here and most people out there is going to affect our lives one way or the other, for better or worse. But it's out there, it's really new, and we have to see how that unfolds. That's really a variable I think a lot of us are concerned about.
Okay, why don't you talk about Dodd-Frank? How is it going to affect an operator or a landlord when in your hat as an owner of real estate, and this guy is an owner of real estate? What's the effect of Dodd-Frank on the real estate industry as a borrower and so on?
They can very well affect the lending, the profitability of a bank, and where they would have to change their business model to a large degree. Unfortunately, Dodd-Frank is putting the government into your boardroom as well. For better or worse.
That unfortunately has been the excuse of banks over the past several years, why they do not want to lend despite the fact that they're borrowing money for nothing. So the question is that become an excuse, or does that become part of the industry?
Absolutely not an excuse. The construction industry around the United States has not done well. They don't necessarily look at New York, gee, you're doing great. They look at the country as a whole, and construction has become largely a dirty word. So as I said in the conversations before, if we're going to do a construction loan, we always model it as underwrite it as a rent, regardless if it's for sale and the economics involved in that. But you also have much more allowances against that. For example, if it's a $50 million loan, we'd say 2.5% of the allowance could be over $1 million, which somewhere along the line affects your bottom line and your capital as well. Whereas a rent stabilized would be 30 or 40 basis points.
See, Michael, your bank is doing better than most,
I believe
not
we are.
all, because you have a terrific housing stock in New York City that wants to refinance, and that housing stock isn't going anywhere. But as I told you before, if you were the only bank in the world, nothing would get built in this world.
Well, see, but I disagree. With the amount of sovereign funds coming into this country, especially in the New York area, and you talk about private equity, any bank will lend when you put up 50% equity.
That's correct.
And so what has happened is that the rules have changed. The money is there. It's just that the banks don't want to take any risk. I guess you can't blame them for that.
Correct.
All right. The government perhaps will put more stringent controls on them. And as long as we can attract in this city and the country foreign money and private equity money, the banks will start lending. At least I presume that.
Except the deal has to work. As I think I mentioned yesterday at the symposium, we had a pre-approval deal came into us. Extremely expensive deal. The cost of the job, the cost was $6.5 million an apartment. The mortgage basically was almost $5 million an apartment. And to underwrite it as a rental was $17,000 a month to break even. However, no matter how much equity goes in there, if we don't see the job as a solid job, we're going to have problems whether we have 50 or 25% equity in the deal. So it has to be underwritten correctly. Because if the developer has problems, no matter how much money they have in there, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah, but what Jeffrey said is that if sovereign fund comes in and puts up 90%, you'll give them a loan, right? No matter how risky it is.
That's not true. If we think the deal makes sense, if the economics of the deal works, we'll do it.
Well, somebody's going to lend them the money.
I'm not saying no.
Yeah,
but if the deal goes in trouble, we have 10% or 20%, there's going to be a problem.
You know, but Josh made a good comment. Somebody's going to lend them the money. At the symposium yesterday, I asked the question, and you were on that panel with Brian Harris, has the CMBS world changed? And he said, yeah, it's reaching CMBS 3.0. And what do I mean?
Again.
And it's starting off, and people are getting interest only again. And there are terms over there, and it's getting to higher numbers. And here's the problem. Some banks who want to lend, they want to go into the market. You know, we brought up the fact that, you know, Astoria hadn't been in the business, so they're out there, and Chase wants to be in the business, so they're putting money out at 3.25 and 5, 7-year deals. So if they go to put money out, and somebody says, I want to be in the market, you know, it's the broker mentality and anything else. Find me the deal where there's going to be 2 years interest only. Or then, you know, I'm buying this building, I'm going to reposition it because I heard at Mike Stola's symposium or another event, their rents are $90 a foot. So Mr. Banker, not New York Community Bank, XYZ new bank who's going to open up the street who wants to come here, and they speak to their advisor, Jeff Levine, who should I go to? And he says, you know, I know that we're only getting $1,200 a month for this apartment, but when I get rid of that tenant, because I know how to buy him out and I'm going to get rid of him, I'm going to get $4,000 or $4,500 a month. And some banks, somebody's going to give the money.
I don't think that rings well anymore. Those days are over. The idea of buying out a tenant who's paying $40 a square foot because you can get a tenant for $60 a square foot, I don't think they buy it anymore.
I've seen it happen.
I think, well, it's going to happen once in a while, but I think what the banks are buying is the REITs or the hedge funds that are putting in so much cash that they can't resist putting in.
I have a dear friend who's a regional president of a bank, and he said, you know, in 2007, 2008, when the world went bad, some of the private equity funds that he dealt with who didn't play nice in giving back the paper, he doesn't want to do business with. Now, Mike Papagallo from Kimco was on my panel yesterday. Kimco had to give back some deals in 2009. But they were good to their lender. You know, there's a way to give back the deal, and there's a way not to give back.
Absolutely correct.
And basically, if you gave it back and you did a nice relationship, you can come back to the door. If you've been a bad boy, that's why they don't want to always deal with the private equity fund. Because the private equity fund, and I know one of them who happened to do business with New York Community Bank, you know, said, hey, we're a private equity fund, so there's no guarantees. You know, it's some type of entity. You have to trust me, right?
Except what I've heard recently is on the CMBS loans, which are in workouts, there is no correlation between working at a deal and playing not nice in the sandbox, and going back to a bank for a loan. It's a disconnect. Then it's not that I was bad to New York Community Bank and I want to go back and get another loan. No, that's the same person. But you deal with the servicer, separate and distinct, doesn't spoil your name.
Like I said, what you said before is absolutely correct. Bad things happen to good people who do the right thing. They could always come back.
You know, so it's there. But, you know, you've been in Brooklyn. Both you've been in Brooklyn over there. And Brooklyn today is seeing this great resurgence over there. And you've been in Queens. Where do you see the opportunities, you know, for you, the next generation who's involved in your businesses and your clients, the next opportunity? Is it New Jersey? Is it Long Island? You know, because, you know, some of the negatives about Long Island is, you know, Nassau County has high taxes, Suffolk County, it's next to impossible to get anything zoned. What do you say?
Well, I think the opportunities are really out there. Cash is king. Today you get hardly anything in a T-bill, hardly anything in a savings bank. I mean, this is just the way it is. You can buy something for a 5 cap, even for a 4 cap that you know is great real estate, going to go better. They're out there. It's a nice place to park money today. So those opportunities are available, but you're not going to be leveraged very high. You're going to have to put the cash into it.
But that's that comment is true, and that's why last year a lot of multifamily apartments in the city were sold, and a number of these were purchased by established families based on the simple comment, I know that type of business, I understand that business, so I might as well invest in something I know as opposed to getting 1/4% in the bank.
Correct.
I can talk on behalf of the developers of the world, as many as there are. I think the boroughs and Manhattan, including Manhattan, are going to continue to be the preferred area because of the transportation system, as simple as that. Long Island's very difficult to get around. New Jersey has a rapid transportation system that comes into New York, but it's very limited. And when you want to have to drive, you don't want to go there. Westchester is boring. So where else do you want to live? Do you want to live in, and every year they seem to discover a new area outside Manhattan that seems to be acceptable.
Now, I remember while doing your life story, when you and your wife were married, one of your first jobs was to go to Staten Island for a shopping center that you had with the Wallbaums over there.
Yeah.
You know, and what about Staten Island? I mean, it's a hidden borough. I mean,
unfortunately, a lot of the so-called subsidies that helped development on Staten Island have been eliminated. So to build a middle-income house, where once there was a tax subsidy, it's no longer available. And the transportation has not gotten easier. It still is an area within New York City, however, where you can get affordable housing. One day, St. George will wake up. It's a great location. It's a ferry ride away. We haven't done anything recently on Staten Island because it just became an area which became too difficult to develop in and not very popular.
Now I have a really, I mean, since we're all contemporaries, you know, you being the elder statesman over here, you know, and also the, okay, also allegedly the better golfer than your friend Mr. Levine.
Allegedly.
Nothing alleged about it.
Alleged.
Oh, yes,
okay.
there is. Okay.
When we were younger, there was something called the Catskills. Do you see a resurrection of the Catskills, Joshua?
Yes, I do. Actually, believe it or not, on Monday somebody went up who I know well to look at a property that I know well to decide if it was a good location for a casino. Apparently a deal's been made. I can't vouch for it. I don't know anything.
You
I
mean
just read
the
the
government?
They passed the first level of legislation to allow up to 7 casinos, regular casinos in New York State. One of them obviously will probably be an aqueduct because the deal, they're going to get 4 million square feet of convention space. 1, probably 2, maybe 3 will go up to the Catskills, and then a few more will be distributed. It seems like it's going to happen. Of course, we felt that way for many years.
Mike, what do you think? You know, you remember the Catskills?
I remember it well. Remember from a busboy in the Catskills in those days. I am not bullish about the Catskills. I just don't see the population. You talk about the casinos.
You're a conservative banker. I'm a developer.
Correct. You're asking me from my end, you know. I just don't see the population, don't see the industry there. And I'm not sure everything can feed off a casino in the Catskills.
So what happened to Atlantic City?
Thank you.
Okay.
Have you
Jeff,
been,
that's
have-
correct.
There was
have
there was an article, I don't know if it was in a newspaper or it was in a blog, which talked about the resurgence of vacation homes, which you can drive to because, it was in the Wall Street Journal, I think, because you don't want to hassle with airplanes anymore. You have to drive within a reasonable distance because of the costs. And I'm not saying that the Catskills are going to be the answer, but for sure, if somebody goes up and builds 2 or 3 casinos, it'll create a new atmosphere.
Can I say something? I celebrated a birthday in March, and my wife and I and friends went over the weekend to Atlantic City because my wife wanted to see Liza Minnelli on my birthday. And we went to Atlantic City, and I drove into Atlantic City, and I said, what happened 30 years?
But there's nothing there.
No. And I passed the new Revelle, which is opening up on Memorial Day, which had a soft opening. It's at the end of the boardwalk. It's nowhere. I walked into this beautiful shopping center that has Tiffany's and the Apple Store across from Caesars, and it's 60% vacant. You ride through the area, nothing's happened. Why is it going to be different in the Catskills as opposed to Atlantic City?
Oh, boy. I didn't come here to plug the Catskills.
No, I just, we're talking about where the pros look.
In the old Woodstock, the farm, there is a magnificent concert center for as many as 20, 30,000 people, which would have the New York Philharmonic if there were some hotels up there. There's the best fishing, one of the best fishing trout streams in the country. There's great golf. There are many areas where there are beautiful homes. It's a venue. It's not a one stop like Atlantic City. Where else is somebody going to go when they have to go
Atlantic
somewhere?
City has a beach.
So does
They don't have
Brighton.
trout fishing.
So does Brighton, and so does Long Island.
Wait a second. You know, since I believe are you Brooklyn born also?
Isn't everybody?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with
Excuse me?
I'm with Marty Markowitz's Brooklyn boys over here. You know, all of us were born in Brooklyn, and let's be realistic. Let's look what happened. You took a place that I still remember that. You know, I wasn't wealthy enough to go to Brighton Beach private. You know, you used to have to be able to get the stamp on from somebody else and get.
You went to Bay 8th Street.
Okay, Bay 8th Street. Okay, so what happens is, weren't you the visionary? I mean, it took a little time on the Oceana. I mean, right?
So?
But it's water. People like the water over
But
there.
there's also a subway that gets you into Manhattan. That's primary housing, although there are many people who went there to have a second home. I'm talking about a whole different venue. I really was not prepared to espouse the...
No,
Josh, that stopped you as a visionary. It really did, and that was a phenomenal project. It really was.
Thank you, Mike.
We were talking also, you know, about Bell Harbor before. Why don't we see more resurgence in the Rockaways? Jeff?
No clue.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's in the middle of nowhere.
It's difficult to get to the subway line.
Unfortunately, it's ringed by communities that are not being, that are dangerous almost in some respects. In New York City, that's hard to say. And a lot of the housing...
I mean, it's beautiful water.
A lot of the housing that was built there really is cruddy. It was built, some of the new housing there is probably very ugly. So if they were going to prime the pump for respectable new middle-income housing, I'm not sure that they did a good job.
But, you know, you have a lot of retail. Have you ever done anything in the Rockaways?
No.
Because
Truth is, I buy location. I mean,
it's not critical mass. There's not the...
that's correct. That's correct.
Look, there's great difficulty. You can look at Long Beach. Long Beach has ocean. Long Beach, is there a place to live? Not quite sure. There are some condos on the water. That's about it. It's populated by young people. You go down that street in the summertime and everybody's partying. They're not the ones to be able to afford those condominiums. There's a mixture there.
No, they can't afford that luxury kind. I mean, Engel Berman's Aqua is 2 years or 3 years. You know, he still fortunately paid off the construction loan, but you know those units haven't sold because the real estate taxes at the Aqua are very high because the Nassau County and Long Beach financial condition. And let's take you want a reality. Fortunately, New York Community Bank's not involved with it, but a number of other banks, they built that hotel over there, who's in foreclosure. I mean, it's nice to have a pretty hotel.
How'd that hotel ever have a chance? The only possible time it can get busy is during the summer.
Right. There was no potential for that hotel. It was a 3-month hotel.
There's no business nearby. It's an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half to Manhattan. I mean, they're building hotels everywhere.
It goes back to that
But
concept
even there.
that you were saying before about the convention center at Aqueduct. You read, does it make any sense? Does anybody want to come to New York and be at Aqueduct for a convention?
You know, you go to Las Vegas, well, there's a big difference.
That's
You
3
go
blocks off.
to Houston, and you go to a
Josh, you know,
convention.
Las Vegas has, I don't care if you have, look, the Javits Center was built. No restaurants ever went to the neighborhood. No restaurateur is going to open up in Aqueduct. You know, it's like somebody saying, I want to be, you know, in Patchogue, Long Island. Is a young person thinking of, you don't, Aqueduct is not a place for a convention center because there's nothing nearby. You know, you have to commute. You know, travelers don't like that. It's great for a gambling place. It's like the Yonkers is doing fantastic over there, but at least you have place nearby. You have communities. You have people living there. I can't see that.
I don't disagree with you, but as a defense attorney who takes a different position, you get 4 million square feet of free space. Where are you going to find that in Manhattan? Perhaps a better location would be Willets Point, but I don't want to go into that one. But if they
That's right, because the
provide,
subway is right
if
over
they
there.
provide the proper transportation to Aqueduct, and they can, because there is a subway that goes there, and they provide proper access, I think it can work. Because it works at Javits Center, and there's nothing near Javits Center.
The Javits Center is a different case.
It's in Manhattan, yeah, I know.
That's right. I am happy that I brought a couple of Levines, or should I say, I put the alumni of the Brooklyn Association all together today to provide their insight on their thoughts for 2012. We've had a good dialogue. I'd like to thank Mike Levine, Josh Muss, and Jeff Levine. I'll see you next week.